I'm Simon Cox, and in this edition of Assignment for BBC World Service, I'm in Cyprus to investigate what caused the downfall of a bank that's had huge implications for this economy and its people.
Today is a national day of 25th of March. It's also a religious holiday. All the high schools are parading now. It's one of the things that they didn't want to stop because they said life goes on.
That's Andreas. He's a highly paid manager at a bank called Laiki, which means popular in English.
Quite a few people saw this coming. A lot of people are warning him, but nobody pay attention to this because we are living in a euphoria. We thought that, everything will be better and better year by year. Unfortunately, this is not whatever goes up, goes down.
This isn't like other banking crises that have happened across Europe. This time, the International Monetary Fund refused to bail out Cyprus's banks because it didn't want to rescue rich Russians, who it said had been using Cyprus as a tax haven. But as I spent time in the country speaking to bank employees and senior executives, I discovered many Cypriots believe the catalyst for this crisis lies much closer to home.
I'm the manager of in the IT, the network and infrastructure. I've been working for the bank since 85, 28 years. That's where I met my wife. We got married.
The banks are supposed to open tomorrow. What do you think is going to happen?
Some of our people are in today working on this. The order from the governor or the ministry says that there will be restrictions. They haven't decided the amount yet. Or if you read the restrictions they have sent us, it's just the amount says XX, which means it's unknown. So we have to see how things will go.
What do you know about your job? Do you know you've got a job? What have you been told?
Nobody knows. Everybody's wondering what will happen because the order that they have or the decision that they have taken is to separate the bank in the good bank and the bad bank. We don't know what this means.
Andreas looks every inch the prosperous professional, early 50s, tanned, well-dressed, with fashionable aviator sunglasses. When I first meet him on Monday, the decision has been taken to close Cyprus's second biggest bank, Laiki, which owed over €9 billion, or $11 billion, to the European Central Bank. Andreas and the other Laiki employees say the problems at the bank can be traced back to 2006, when it was taken over by a Greek investment firm called Marfin.
The first thing they managed to do, they gave everybody a €2,000 bonus because we did a good job and we're wondering what did we do. I was, classic textbook case if you read the MBA books and everything, how to manipulate the bank. They broke the hierarchy, pretending that it was a modern management thing. They doubled the salaries of everybody. Nobody could complain. If you are complaining, you are considered to be a loser or to be a conservative or not to be part of them. So, nobody talked about it.
So did the bank change the way that it lended?
Yeah. I mean, from what we found later, they were giving loans, unsecured loans for people to buy shares in the MIG group. They were approving them without any real security behind those loans. And a lot of people are, I should say, crying for this. My wife has been crying for 3 or 4 days now, saying why should we pay and not them? Why should we lose our jobs and everything?
So can we catch up with you a bit later and find out?
Yeah, as soon as I find out, I will let you know what is happening and what will happen. And of course, you are in the area, you'll see demonstrations happening if things go worse.
Hasn't taken long for the protests to start. Centre of town, there's maybe, 300-400 students who've come out onto the streets, most of them in black, and they've got various banners and flags. They're obviously angry at the deal that's been struck at the weekend. Like many people here, they're wondering how a country that only a few years ago was praised for its conservative approach to banking could end up asking for €17 billion, that's $21 billion, from the International Monetary Fund. The IMF said the Cypriot government would have to find €7 billion itself to bail out the banks, so it took the unprecedented step of making depositors in the 2 biggest banks foot the bill. Anyone with over €100,000 or $125,000 in Laiki Bank or the Bank of Cyprus will lose at least 60% of their funds. It seems incredible raiding bank accounts in this way. I wanted to find out what it was like having to make this decision. So I've just had a call from an MP called Bambos Papageorgiou. He's on the Finance Committee. He's an opposition MP at the moment, but he's been involved in negotiations all weekend, and he said he's just got an hour free at the moment, so he's going to come to the hotel, have a coffee with me here. What was it like, the atmosphere there, when you're having those discussions? Because you must have realised the weight that was on your shoulders.
Well, we didn't have freedom there, no freedom of choice. We felt we were compelled. The moment the idea of one way or the other confiscating parts of deposits was put on table by Eurogroup, our banking system was finished. And they did that deliberately, of course, because they have a certain understanding, especially the Germans, about the Cyprus economic model. They say it's a threat to the Eurozone because it's effectively a tax haven inside the Eurozone. And they made everything possible to kill it off. Unfortunately, we are the guinea pigs of a very savage experiment.
One of the key players in this story are the Russians. They're thought to have between 20 to 30 billion euros in deposits in these two affected Cypriot banks. The EU has taken such a tough stance on this deal because they said they didn't want to effectively bail out these rich Russians who've been using Cyprus as a tax haven for years. And the question is what they're going to do now. So I'm heading out of Nicosia on the road down to the coast to Limassol and Paphos, which is where lots of Russian investors and businesses and Russians are living. So this is it, Michael. This is a very strange looking...
it's looking like a Russian tank, you know.
It is. It's big, brown, iron, quite mean-looking fish. Fish
yes,
stock.
It's a fish, yeah.
You can't miss Mikhail Nicholas's homage to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, his submarine promising a 7D experience to tourists visiting Paphos harbour. A former lawyer, Mikhail now runs a yachting company charting boats predominantly to Russian tourists.
Everybody believing that all the Russians are coming, there's something, something criminal, but my business is 100% clear. Maybe, I understand that a lot of criminal money is here, but I believe not only Russians. Maybe, the idea was to punish the Russians. Maybe it's so.
What about your Russian friends, colleagues? Were they caught up in this as well, or had they moved their money already out of those banks?
Some of them, maybe they did it, because I've seen it today on the internet. There's a lot of offers like, illegally, we transfer your money from Cyprus here. But I believe to make it legal is no possibility now to do it legal. So I believe that since the bank will be open, all of my Russian partners and me as well will take money from the bank, this for sure.
Has it made you think about, should you stay in Cyprus, should you go elsewhere?
Of course I would prefer to stay in Cyprus because I love it, and my family is happy here, and I'm tied my future life with Cyprus, but we'll see, I don't know.
One person who has a great deal of knowledge about Russian business interests is Andrius Neuklius, who's a lawyer here in Limassol. I'm actually sitting in the reception of his pretty grand offices, Neuklius House, and there's a big picture of Russia just on the back glass here because this firm first opened an office in that country over 20 years ago. So I'm about to go up in the lift, I'd imagine up to the top floor, to meet the man himself.
My name is Andreas Neuklius and I am a lawyer. First of all, I don't understand why this is happening to Cyprus. Cyprus is very well rated as regards compliance with the money laundering rules. We have very strict rules, and we are scrutinizing our clients. Even the slight suspicion, if I think that something is going wrong, I am not going to take this client.
Senior sources within Laiki Bank told us too that the amount of Russian investment in Cypriot banks has been exaggerated. There was no evidence it was being laundered, and anyway, most of it was moved long before the hit on deposits. Andreas Neuklius has other concerns, namely the future of his firm.
And did you have large deposits in Laiki and Bank of Cyprus?
Yes, these two banks were our bankers. We had mostly all our money there and the reserves and accounts. And roughly I can say that we are suffering a loss of a little bit more than 20 million euros.
20 million?
20 million euros, yes.
Just go on.
Vanished.
That's a lot of money.
I agree with it. It was reserves of many, many years of hard work, and it was a guarantee for the running of our company, and we were proud.
That was really strange. I've just come out from interviewing Mr. Neuklius. We've gone there for his Russian expertise, but this firm, this very grand building, they've just lost 20 million euros. There must be concerns about whether they'll survive. And what it tells you is, I imagine you could go into any of these offices around here, office blocks, and you might well come across the same story. So if it wasn't Russians, who was responsible? Hello. Hey, Andreas, how are you doing? So, right, that's all you've been told then. I hope to get more clues when I visit the home of Andreas, the IT manager at Laiki, who's trying to get the banks ready to open. We've come to the outskirts of Nicosia, and I'm in front of Andreas's house, which is a nice modern villa, a couple of big palm trees either side of it, a couple of nice cars as well in the driveway, and I can see he's waiting to meet us. He's come out very kindly. So I'm going to find out what happened when he went into work. Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Come in.
Thank you very much.
Today I went to work in the morning to see how we will operate.
What was it like, the atmosphere going into the bank?
Everybody was, they said it's like going to a funeral. You go to a place that you have been working for so many years. Just there, everybody's sad. We're making jokes. We'll see you at the line of the unemployment. How do you say the tragic jokes?
Would you like to drink something?
Yeah, very nice.
Andreas is still waiting to find out if his pension's safe. Sitting in his cool lounge, sipping green tea, looking out at the well-tended garden, I get a sense of just how entrenched Laiki Bank is within the middle class. Both Andreas's wife and sister-in-law, Fidula, have worked at the bank for decades. Fidula fled here with her family from northern Cyprus in 1974 after Turkey invaded. She's worried she'll face similar hardship again. As she begins to realise how bad things are, her anger is directed at her former bosses.
Over the years, there were rumors that loans, big loans, were given in Greece, in the Greek branches, without enough security. I'm sorry, I'm being rude. I'm trying to be polite, but they do not deserve it. I'm sorry. It's very hard because I have 3 kids. I'm trying to put a nice face, a smiley face, trying to explain to them that everything would be okay. But I'm not sure if I believe it. We have the mortgages, all of our loans, none of our savings, none of our pension funds so far, and not our jobs. What do they expect us to do?
So you have a mortgage with the bank as well and loans as well?
Yes, we do. Some of the loans were made to purchase shares of the bank after the directors of the bank over the years telling employees that it would be nice, if they could get a loan to buy shares of the bank and support in that way their employer, the bank that feeds them, that gives them bread every day. And in another instance, director, called us and put us in a small conference room telling us it would not look good in our resume if we sold those shares. So most of the people didn't sell their shares. In the meantime, afterwards, we found out that all directors had already sold theirs.
And the person who was telling you that, do you know if they sold shares?
Yes, that person sold all his shares and he even left the bank.
All week, we've been contacting senior members of Laiki Bank to try and explain to us what went on. Finally today, one has agreed to meet us, so I've come to a very nice area of Nicosia. There's lots of substantial villas around here, and I'm going to meet this person. They don't want us to say what their position was, just that they were very senior, and their answers are going to be spoken by an actor. In 2006, Laiki Bank was taken over by a Greek investment firm called Marfin. What effect did that have?
In Greece, they were giving out loans for acquisition of shares. Laiki Bank in Cyprus didn't know what they were doing in Greece. There was this investment banking mentality. This only came to the surface in detail in 2011 when all the credit committees merged. So we looked into the loans and realised what was going on. And we said, what is this? We had lots of arguments about it.
And there was this €700 million loan to a shipping company that quite a few people have told me about.
This was the biggest disaster. I think we lost €350 million on that. But there were others. I mean, for example, one of the TV channels in Greece had a loan of €500 million.
You were a senior executive. What responsibility do you have for the failure of the bank?
Mistakes were made by bankers for many reasons. Primarily the concentration of loans in Greece, but also politics and the Troika. So the blame, I'd say, is maybe 30% bankers, 30% politics, 30% the Troika.
There are lots of people in Cyprus who do think the Troika, which is the European Union, the European Central Bank and the International Monetary Fund, bear some responsibility. But this executive wasn't the only one at Laiki we spoke to who traced the bank's downfall back to 2006 when it merged with Marfin, and with it the ousting of long-standing Cypriot board members. On Friday, Marfin's chief executive, Efthinios Bouloutas, agrees to be interviewed. He also used to be the chief executive of Laiki Bank, but he'll only speak to me on the phone.
Till mid-2011, the banks have undertaken a successful stress test conducted by the European Banking Authority, and they passed with flying colours, both of the two large systemic banks. These were solid indicators of the robustness of Cyprus' banking system.
In late 2011, Laiki Bank lost 75% of the money it invested in Greek government bonds, around €2.5 billion. He says this was what sent the bank into a downward spiral. What we have found, though, is talking to senior members of Laiki Bank, that they say when Marfin took over, that the bank changed, that they started making a lot riskier loans, especially in Greece, and that the Cypriot side of the bank didn't really know what was going on the Greek side.
This is not a true and correct portrayal of the story, because, as I said, first of all, there was always a group director within a new matrix organization charge.
One of the accusations that senior executives have said to us is that loans were granted with very little security sometimes, not enough collateral, very, very big loans.
For example... This is not correct. All the loans that were granted were according to the commercial and lending policy that followed, credit committee approvals and so on and so forth.
What is known is that in 2011, when the bank ends up in a lot of trouble, that €400 million is made in loans to directors, to the board of directors. That doesn't seem a very clever idea when the bank is in trouble.
First of all, director loans are being, published in the annual report, and all the director loans are going through the board of directors. I cannot recall the exact number, but the fact is that there were not 400 million of loans. granted to board of director members in 2011. The board of director loans have been accumulated through the years.
But when we looked again at the bank's financial reports, they clearly state that in 2011, the board of directors and their connected people took loans of €400 million or around $500 million.
You don't feel any responsibility for taking over a bank that was quite conservative, ends up in the end needing €9 billion to keep it going, to prop it up?
Mr. Cox, as I said, I think that, in my view, the political decision resolved Laiki was what led to this situation that we have currently.
Somehow I like a hotel here where people stay from when they come from overseas.
So all of this, the Laiki Bank Sporting Centre, Laiki Bank
I don't
IT
know.
Centre.
I don't know what will happen to this. From what they told us, we check about our building. It's the collateral for the ELA. They got transferred to the Bank of Cyprus.
For now, Andreas is still working in a state-of-the-art IT centre, which looks like a massive act of hubris. It was only opened a few years ago by a bank that no longer exists. The complex around it will all be passed over to the Bank of Cyprus, along with Andreas and the other 2,000 Laiki staff. But the Bank of Cyprus has also taken on Laiki Bank's huge debts, and many here question whether it can survive.
My wish is that this thing never happens to anybody. You don't even wish this to happen to your worst enemy. All this anxiety, most of our friends are from this area of banking, IT. In a few months when they start selecting who is going to stay, you will see the attitude of the people change. It will be survival.
Andreas faces an uncertain future, as does the country he loves. There's bound to be higher unemployment, a deepening recession and a flight of skilled workers from a decimated banking sector. When we arrived, the country was celebrating Greece's National Day. But will there be the same desire next year, when Cyprus realises its downfall was primarily due to its bank's investments in its closest neighbour? But there is one positive which we found among all of those who'd lost so much so quickly: a fighting spirit and determination, which they'll need to put this country back together.
And if you come after Easter, we do some barbecue. Souvla. All right. I do the best souvlaki. My souvla is average. Souvlaki is the best. You try with that. All right?
See you.
Okay.
That's all for this edition of Assignment. From me, Simon Cox. The producer was Lucy Proctor. You can hear more of this series if you go to bbcworldservice.com/assignment.